Good day to everybody. Welcome to another Faith Seeking Understanding, another episode, our final episode of the year of Calmly Considered. I am your host, Alan Bevere. I am a pastor, retired, but kind of gigging as an interim at the moment. I am a professor. I am a Bible moth, a theologian in exile, and a peddler of hope. And I am the self-appointed Anselm of Canterbury Chair of Podcast, Theology, and Culture here at Faith Seeking Understanding University, a completely fabricated institution of higher learning, but where all seekers are invited to ponder profound things free of charge. And with me is Michael, the Chiefs are killing me, Cruz, who is the Grand Poobah Professor of Economics and Public Theology here at FSUU. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Alan?
Other than Sundays, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
My
if you
goodness.
would have told me, if you would have said to me at the beginning of the football season that at this time of the season, the Browns and the Chiefs would have the same record, I would have looked like you. I would have looked at you like you had turnips growing out your ears.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I saw
they're just they're kind of in their own way, aren't they? They keep getting in their own way.
Oh, absolutely. The only thing the Chiefs have to blame is the Chiefs. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Somebody had a stat on one of the programs I was watching this week that said the Chiefs have among their wide receivers have an 8% drop rate. The average for the NFL is 4%.
Right.
And they said that 8% drop rate is the highest for any NFL team in the past decade, and by a full percentage point higher than any other team. So you do that.
And it's got to be frustrating for Mahomes to be putting those passes right in there and having them drop them, right?
Oh, they are wasting a prime Mahomes, a year of Mahomes in his prime.
Right.
They're wasting a year of that with all this nonsense. And then you have the penalties. They're one of the most penalized teams in the NFL. Drop passes, just stupid, nonsensical mistakes happening over and over again. It's just so they better figure it out soon. They got about 4 more games. After these last 2 games, though, I am thinking I'm not sure I want to be the Patriots playing the Chiefs next week.
They got their own problems, don't they? Yeah. At least the Chiefs aren't the Patriots. I mean, I mean, and the Browns. I mean, I can't believe with their injuries. I mean, they are not at the top of the list as far as players on IR, but they're close to the top in reference to first string players, starters.
Right.
I mean, the people they have lost, and they're still in this. I mean, and
I know.
And I give Stefanski a lot of credit. I think he's done a good job of keeping it together, even though I've been critical.
Right.
Sometimes his play calling he gets cutesy. I mean, other than that, he's just done. And Joe Flacco has come in, and I don't know. I mean, I really don't know at what point are there just too many injuries that you can't overcome.
Right.
And I think we're there. I think we're there, but who knows? I don't know. I can't tell you for sure, but I'm just amazed by it. And by the way, they also are high in penalties like the Chiefs, and they're number 1 in the NFL in giveaways. They've turned over the ball. They're number 1. So how they're 8-5 and at the top of that list, I don't know, but it's just interesting to see. So anyway,
gonna be a wild and woolly finish.
It'll be a wild and woolly finish. Yes, and by the way, the best news in sports, Michael, is pitchers and catchers report about 2 months. So life is good.
I know.
All right.
It is good. We're getting there.
Well, let's get to our subject at hand. This is our last episode for 2023. And we typically do a year in review and predictions for 2024. We did that last year. And we both reviewed that last night, and so we'll just kind of start from there, 2023. Well, the one thing that we both said last year, unfortunately, it's true. Ukraine is still at war with Russia, and it has been once again just another tragedy. That didn't have to happen, but because Vladimir Putin is a bad actor and on the world stage, and it's just the carnage has been terrible. I read a headline the other day, Michael. I didn't read the article, so I don't have specifics, but the headline said that Russia has lost like 80% of their military force in Ukraine.
Hey,
I mean, that
87%
is
of the people they sent. Yeah.
87% of the that is astounding. I mean, when you look at, that's almost Civil War numbers, right?
Right.
I mean, in some battles aren't even that. I mean, it's
Right.
it's astounding that they've lost that many, and they had to have degraded their military. I'm not so sure.
Oh yeah.
I'm not so sure if somebody decided to invade them, which I would hope wouldn't happen. I don't know that they could withstand it. I just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I think what this is giving testament to, though, is when you have a dictator in power like Putin, and there is no accountability, the public can't hold him accountable. I mean, he can continue to just keep throwing people into the meat grinder almost endlessly, and so as bad as it is, I don't think it's anywhere near the end.
Well, and when you and there's no doubt. I mean, I can't believe that the majority of the Russian people still want this. I'm sure everybody wants it to end. But again, as you say, they have no leverage because there's no accountability. At least in a democracy, you've got accountability, and in order for a democracy to sustain a war, they've got to be able to appeal to the people for that kind of support. And it's just not happening, and it's just the sadness when you think about the loss of life, when you think of on both sides, and the Ukrainians. But the Ukrainians are just tough. I mean, I have to give them credit. Boy, they're not backing down, and they're not giving up. And I really wish that a certain segment of the American people I wish they could see the big global picture, that Ukraine cannot fall to the Russians, that it is not good for the future. It's not good for Europe, and ultimately it's not good for us.
Exactly right. Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier this week, and you have people like Putin and Xi in China, and then Orban in Hungary to a lesser degree, and then I would include Trump in this category of people that are authoritarians, that they may not be in league with each other. They may have conflicting ambitions in terms of what they want personally. But what they do have a common interest in is destabilizing or degrading the ability of Western ideas of rule of law, liberal democracy, and so on. Anything that can hold them accountable, seeing those things degraded. And so the idea of a Ukraine falling to Russia would benefit both Putin and the Trumplicans in terms of the vision that they have for the world that they want to create, which is dominated by various poles of strongmen running their little fiefdoms of various places around the world.
Yeah.
And so they have a common interest in that. And that's what you're seeing, I think, with many of the political maneuvers to try to block funding to Ukraine, and both in Europe and in the United States. And it's a difficult time. At least in the United States, I don't know how Europe's system works. I heard that yesterday that I guess Orban blocked funding for now from the European Union to Ukraine yesterday. And then, of course, the Republicans tried to use Ukraine funding as a pawn for other things that they want to get done. Some don't want it at all, no matter what the circumstances. So I don't know. We'll see what the future is, but I suspect that the United States is eventually going to get that funding there. It may not be till a month or two from now, but I suspect they're going to get it.
Yeah. Well, they will get it because
Yeah.
even though the Trump Putin wing of the Republican Party, as I like to call them, has done a lot of damage and really and frankly has just corrupted the Republican Party, there's still plenty of Republicans that don't fit into that group, and particularly in the Senate, there are
Yeah.
There are a couple of senators, Tommy Tuberville and
Yeah.
some of those, and JD Vance, who's the Senate used to be a place of statesmen, stateswomen, and
Right.
JD Vance is he's one of my senators. He's
Right.
just I don't know. I need to be careful. I don't want to be too insulting, but other than a couple of three senators, I mean, the Republican Senate, they get it. Even Lindsey Graham, who has just gone off the deep end as a shill for Trump, but he still understands the implications of what's going on in Ukraine. So it'll get funded, but in the meantime, it's just going to be kind of a dog and pony show, right?
It is. Yeah.
And that. Well, let's move on to another war-torn area, Gaza and Israel, and that started this year, and that another place where we just mourn the loss of life on both sides. And I understand what Israel is doing because they want to root Hamas out of Gaza, and Hamas, as we have said when we talked about this, is a terrorist group. They're bad players. It'd be wonderful if they would be out of the picture. But I don't really know, Michael, that continuing to bomb Gaza is going to finally uproot Hamas. I mean, I just don't think so. I think there's enough supporters outside of Gaza, Hezbollah and others, that I just don't think it's going to happen. And in the meantime, Palestinians are just getting, destroyed, slaughtered, and at some point, the civilized world, and I would put the Israeli government in that as all, although I'm not a fan of Netanyahu at all, think he needs to go, but at some point the civilized world has to say, the cost of this is too high, right? And it's a classic just war proposition that if destruction is disproportionate to the ends, you don't engage in it. And I just think at some point, Israel's got to say enough. We can't continue to kill these innocent people. And when does that happen? I don't know, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, we did the whole last episode about this topic, and just to reiterate, my basic thing is that there is no easy, straightforward solution to this, and I really think the only way forward is when you have enough people on both sides of this issue that are willing to look forward rather than backward, and see what world they want to create versus continually trying to rehash the past and the various injustices that have been committed by the various sides. I don't know how that's all going to play out.
That's why Netanyahu needs to be gone, because he's not going to be a serious player in a two-state solution, and that's why Hamas needs to be gone, because their objective is not a two-state solution, and a two-state solution is the solution. So you're right. I just think it's going to continue, and it's just sad and tragic. I think one of the great, from a Christian perspective, for me, just the sadness of Bethlehem canceling Christmas celebrations, just because it's too dangerous. So I mean, there is a great irony to be in the land, the Holy Land, and the city of peace, Jerusalem, and not being able to celebrate the coming of the Prince of Peace because bombs are falling. And for me as a Christian, I at least want to say to our fellow Christians, where did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong? Oh boy. Okay. Let's see. Anybody? And so, while we're on foreign policy, before we move to other things, anything we need to talk about in reference? I mean, the economy, Michael. Let's talk economy.
We could do that too. I'm just going to say on the international level, we'll get to the United States here in a minute. Politics we touched on a little bit.
Sure.
just the issue of international freedom and democracy. I think we continue to find challenges. Nigeria's democratic government was overthrown by authoritarian powers, and I'm not sure what's happening in Argentina. The guy that was just elected president down there, libertarian economist, I'm not sure exactly what his commitment is to democracy and freedom, but they clearly were. That's not to say that the forces that were in power there that he displaced were all that great either, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out. So the assault on democracy around the world continues. I mean, that's happening. There is positive news in various places as well too, but just reiterating that what we are experiencing in the United States is an extension of a global a global phenomenon that is occurring in the age of globalization, and so just remembering that piece of it. So
and the world is changing, and there are certain people who don't want that change, and so instead of sucking it up and letting democracy make the decisions, the democratic process make the decisions, because they know the decisions will not be in their favor. They're willing to trust somebody like a Putin or a Trump, or to give them what they want, because democracy isn't working for them, right? I mean, this is just the way that it is. And that's what they want. And it is a global phenomenon. We always have to remember now that we live in a truly global world, meaning we're connected. And you just simply cannot, even though some think we can, isolate yourself off from that and the trends and all of that. It's just there. So exactly. I still have hope and faith that our democratic institutions are still holding and strong, even though they've been degraded, even though Trumpism has worked hard to degrade it, and has done, and has in some places done kind of a good job of that. I still think our institutions are strong enough. And we'll talk about the coming up election in 2024 in a minute. But if Trump should be the next president, even though I would believe that's a disaster, I still think our democratic institutions can hold the onslaught that he and his lieutenants, I'm going to use a nice word, he and his lieutenants would try and engage in. I really think, I'm not saying there wouldn't be a lot of damage done, but I do think it will hold. That's just, and I know I have some friends who are not optimistic. They feel like that if Trump wins, that democracy is done for good. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
We'll see what happens. Maybe by way of analogy, I guess the way I sort of frame my emotional response to it is that I think if you were in the late 1930s looking at Germany, and if you had the information that we know today and looking at that, there was no way that Germany was ultimately going to be able to accomplish what it intended in terms of world domination and being able to do what it did. Still, hundreds of millions of people died. Entire economies, cultures destroyed. So while I do believe we can persevere and we will persevere in the end, what's the level of of damage that happens in between now and then when we recover? And so I don't know what will happen if Trump gets elected. Like you, I think eventually we find our way back to some of these democratic ideals, things that we had in our Constitution and so on. But the level of carnage and damage that could happen in between now and then, I just don't know. It's a big question mark to me.
Well, so, and I agree with that. I agree with that. It's like the doctrine of purgatory. Eventually you're going to get through it, but in the meantime it's painful, and there's a lot of tragedy to it. So anyway,
and if I could just add one piece to that too, that I think from a historical perspective, I think people get discouraged because they see democracy under attack right now in the United States. There are people who are able and capable of doing that. And their perception is, and partly it's because we've had, I think, such a long period of decades where we've been relatively stable in terms of our democratic institutions and commitment to that. Our founders, and I think it's one of the brilliant pieces of the founders was, if you have control that is too tight at the top, then you end up basically instituting tyranny, because there's always going to be bad actors who are going to want to try to get in control of things. And if you have that kind of control, you're never going to be able to make freedom, establish it and keep it. On the other hand, if you don't have a strong enough centralized government, then you'll constantly be spinning into chaos. But by not having that strong centralized government that can truly control things, that means that you're going to have episodes where bad actors are going to attempt to challenge the order.
Right.
And it always becomes to the fact of the people they're peace loving, that are reasonable, that are wanting the good for society, of them having to stand up and reclaim and recommit to the institutions and so on that have created so much peace and prosperity in the past.
Right.
And so I think there are these periods of renewal that have to occur.
Yeah.
And so this testing in and of itself, the idea that somehow because we're tested and they've had some success in aspects of testing, I don't think that needs to be necessarily viewed as the decline, what I'm trying to say, the inevitable decline of the collapse of our system, that somehow we're at the end of it. No, this is another period. We've had them elsewhere in our nation's history of testing and needing to renew ourselves. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I think about the founders. I mean, one of the reasons they did not put term limits into the Constitution, and they knew about term limits.
Sure.
The reason they didn't do that is because they believed it was possible for bad actors to be elected to office.
Right.
But they really believed that once they got elected and people saw their true colors, they would vote them out.
Right.
And sometimes, and I think that does happen. I think sometimes it takes maybe more than one election cycle, but at some point, these
I think a generation.
Yeah, these people use up their capital. And it goes back again to what you and I have said when we've talked about this and other issues in reference to economics as well, is that, economics, good economics, good, just economics, good, just government. I don't care what form of government you have, what kind of economy you have. It requires good people. It requires moral people to run it, right?
Yes.
And you can have a monarchy that's a good form of government if the king or queen is just, right?
Right.
And I mean anything, and whether it's capitalism or socialism, it can work and it can be good if the people running it are virtuous. And it just always goes back to that. I just continue to say character counts and it matters.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
and just as a footnote to that, the current story that's in the news right now, maybe in a few weeks nobody will be talking about this, but the story of Christian and Bridget Ziegler down in Florida. He's the chair of the GOP for Florida, and she's one of the founders of Moms for Liberty, been involved in having a threesome with another woman. And so it gets found out, and it's interesting. Both have been called to resign from their respective positions. Him as chair of GOP, her as Moms for Liberty leader, and both of them are refusing to step down.
Yeah.
And what is the rationale for why they shouldn't have to step down? Hey, Donald Trump was found liable for sexual assault, and he didn't have to step down. Why should we?
Yeah.
And this is the corrupting influence that begins to extend throughout the whole body politic.
Right.
When you allow people that have no character to get away with this type of behavior. And so, and I'm sure there's lots of things, almost everything I probably disagree with Christian Ziegler on, but I think he's exactly right.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump's not going to be held accountable, why should anybody else?
Why should anybody else? Why should anybody else?
Yeah.
Ben Franklin said the fish rots from the head down. So, but by the way, now we know exactly, we thought we knew what Moms for Liberty stood for. Now we know what it really stands for, Michael.
And the one I like is that if they wrote a book or wrote her biography, Moms for Liberty would have to ban it.
Yeah, they'd have to ban it. They'd have to ban it. That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is right. So Let's talk economy for a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had predicted inflation this time would be about 3%. Did that come true?
it's 3.14% right
Oh,
now as
Michael,
of the end of November.
I mean, you're a prophet. You are a
Well,
prophet.
there's the thing that economists have predicted 9 of the last 5 economy, or 9 of the last 5 recessions, rather. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so it's
doing right sometimes.
3.1%. So that's
Yeah,
not bad. I mean, that's not bad.
no, and it's
Un
declining. The
unemployment,
trajectory is
unemployment is down. And that partially, I haven't looked at all the numbers on how that works. There are people who,
right,
like as you have said, if they're not seeking a job, they're not part of the numbers.
right,
But it's not like people. I mean, we still are looking for people to work, and
sure,
the immigrant shortage still continues.
right,
And we just need to get some comprehensive immigration reform,
right,
and be able to bring in some of these folks who can help us with our employment. I mean,
right,
I don't know if that's going to happen.
right,
I mean, I know where Trump was on this and what he did, and he really worked on some of this to keep it down. But I don't know that Biden's
right.
really been proactive in it either. So I'm rather
Yeah,
disappointed in the Biden administration. Now I know that a
yeah,
president can only do so much. You got to have Congress,
right,
and Congress is just a
right,
dysfunctional do nothing. Congress is
right.
just an embarrassment, to be honest,
Yeah,
particularly the House of Representatives. But
yeah,
it's um, we really need that, and it's just not going to happen anytime soon until we get people on both sides of the aisle who really see the need for this and want to do it. Although I'm not
right,
mindful back when George W. Bush was president, all the way back then. I mean, he had been governor of Texas. He understood the need for comprehensive immigration reform, and he couldn't get
oh
it
yeah,
through.
sure.
He couldn't get
Yeah,
it through.
right, right.
So, I don't know.
Don't know how exactly this will all play out, how they'll get there eventually, I hope. But yeah, I mean, but to the economy, the inflation's around 3%. Unemployment, I mean, it used to be not that long ago that if you had unemployment under 5%, that was considered to be a good, healthy economy. And we're still well under 4%
Yeah.
with unemployment these days. So unemployment is reasonable for now. Uninflation is at 3.1%, maybe below 3% by the time we get to the end of December, the way the trend line is going.
Yeah.
So maybe by the end of the year, it will be below 3. I think 2% is the desired range. The price, the what do you call it? The mortgage rates dropped 1% over the past month. There's actually deflation occurring among things like appliances and used cars. They're becoming less expensive. So things are improving, but it is also true that real wages, adjusted for inflation over the past 3 years, have been slowly getting worse. It's been getting a little bit worse, and there are economists, and I should back up and say, at the beginning of last year, when I was saying that we were going to have inflation at 3%, we were talking about would there be a recession. I said I didn't think there would, or if there was one, it was going to be a very mild one. That was here. I will tell you, at that time, virtually 100% of economists were saying there's going to be a recession in 2023. There's no way that we're going to avoid this. We're going to have one, so on and so forth. Well, we didn't have a recession in 2023, and
Yeah.
now they're saying they penciled in a recession for 2024, maybe the first 2 quarters or something like that, or this quarter and the next one, where they think we're going to have a recession. And as one of the guys I was listening to on a news show was saying, said, I know she just said pencil in, she didn't say pinned in.
Yeah.
So who knows what's coming? I think it's possible. There's definitely going to be, I think, a little bit of a slowdown
Yeah.
because the interest rates have tightened the economy. We may see a small jump in the unemployment rate, but it'll be a very small blip. I think quick issue in the next year. But I think it's also Donald Trump, when he was running, one of his big things he always touted was the stock market.
Yeah.
Stock market was his measure of how great a president was. He's genius. It got up by this much, so on and so forth. Well, stock market just surpassed its all-time high this week.
Yeah.
And it's continued to climb. It could still come back down some. Who knows what's going to happen in the next few weeks or months? But I think the overall picture, the indicators show an economy that is stabilizing and finding its footing and is becoming a healthy, stable economy again after COVID. I think last year I said I thought it'd probably take 3 or 4 years before we finally work out all of the kinks that developed because of the COVID thing. I think by the end of this next 2024, again, this is all with a caveat, no big major disruptions in terms of war or something other event happening. I think by the end of 2024, we're going to be in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
we'll see.
You mentioned stock market and Trump touting the numbers, and it's just another reminder to me that and both sides do it. We give too much. We give the president too much credit when the economy is good and too much blame when it's bad. And so, for example, I've got some friends now. They're Biden fans. They're Democrats, and they look at this stuff and say, "See what Biden's done." Well, the president certainly, he's got, he's, as you say, the guy in the back of the canoe that helps steer the waters. So, you can't say he gets no credit for this, but by and large, the economy does what the economy is going to do. And so, and then of course, the people, the Trump supporters, when inflation was so high, look what Biden's done. Well, now they're all quiet, the gas prices are coming down. And so what we do is, as I've said before, I said both sides, Republicans and Democrats, we tend to believe that there is a button in the Oval Office says economy. And the only president who knows how to push that button is my president. If it's the president of my party knows what to do. And the stock market, it hit highs under Trump. There's no doubt about it. It hit, but it hit highs under Obama too. I mean, that's the point. So the point is, yes, give the president, whoever is president, give them appropriate credit when the economy is good, but don't somehow think that they've got it all figured out and that it's all them. So, and I know I'm saying this, and no matter how many times you say it, Michael, no matter who you tell, it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah. And I should also add, in terms of the criticism of Biden, the reason gas prices are so high is because he wanted a lot of drilling. We can't produce any oil. Just these past 2 or 3 months, the United States is once again the by far has had this tremendous surge in oil production. We're the biggest oil, to the point that OPEC is concerned about the price of oil going too low, and they're thinking about so. And I remember when Obama was president, he did a lot of drilling too, even though even though the people on the right were complaining. But there were some Obama supporters really unhappy with how he was opening it up. So again, we just need to understand the complexity of these things. And but again, we human beings, we need things simple, because that it keeps our world ordered for us. So exactly. Okay.
So you think in 2024, then economy for the most part is going to be all right?
That's my suspicion. I think it would be a pretty healthy economy. They, like I said, there are economists that say we could have a mild recession. Maybe. I think you could have a quarter where GDP is down or something like that. GDP in the third quarter of this past year was like, was it 5% or something? I can't remember what it was, 4.5 or 5.4 or something. Anyway, outrageously high. There's no way it's going to maintain that for December. And with the interest rates and constraints on the economy, it's going to slow more than that. But is it going to go negative? We'll see. But even if it does, I think it'll be barely noticeable. And I think we're coming to a healthy place.
Good. Hey, real quick, 2023, before we move to 2024, we got to talk church. The church in 2023, Christian nationalism still is rearing its ugly head and is become really explicit. Christian nationalism's always been there, but the new Speaker of the House, and I can't think of his name,
Mike Johnson. Yeah.
his comments, he basically told God, came to him in a dream and told him that, to get ready because he was going to be the next Moses. I mean, really, really, I mean, seriously, I mean,
Delusions
Michael,
of grandeur much?
Michael, I just like, I listen to this stuff and I just say, I don't know. It's just so hard for me to believe. And I know people get
Yeah.
delusions of grandeur and they think God spoke to them and all that. But
Right.
just this idea that God is interested and working primarily through that nation state called the United States is just such a misunderstanding of the biblical narrative.
Right.
And a misunderstanding of how God works in 2,000 years after Jesus. But it's just amazing to me, and that there are people who just buy into this, and they are so untethered from the biblical text. I still say those Christians in America who tout most being Bible believing are the ones who know the Bible the least. They really do. They really do. They might be able to quote some scripture, but they don't know what it means. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah, I agree. I exactly agree. So that's why we talk about. People who listen to us know where we both stand. We're definitely not in favor of Trump. But the issue is that even if you were to get rid of Trump now, if for somehow he would leave the scene, that does not ultimately solve the problem. The reason the Republicans are where they are and they've embraced this sort of Trumplican view of things is because that's what they want. And they're electing people that reflect those views.
Right.
And so until they begin to change their views, somehow that gets dissipated somehow. That's what you're going to have for a quote conservative party in the United States, which is devastating. Yeah.
And by the way, they are, I really believe that they are pushing to become a minority party because they can't win elections like this. And it's the white evangelical Christians who are losing, quote unquote, the America they want. And so this is what they've resorted to. Wayne Grudem, who is a theologian, who's a pretty competent theologian, who has been a Trump supporter and has kind of gone off the Trump end. But he recently made an argument. He wrote an article, I don't remember where it is, in which he argued evangelical Christians need to dump Trump. But it's not because Trump's immoral or Trump is corrupt or Trump's been indicted 91 times. It's because Trump doesn't have what it takes to bring to fruition the evangelical agenda, political agenda of power, right? So again, no thoughts of throw this guy out because he speaks and lives everything that Jesus would have been opposed to, right?
Right.
No, that's not why we don't want him. We don't want him because he can't give us what we want.
Right. Yep. Exactly. It's all transactional.
It's all transactional. Yeah. So anyway. All right, let's talk 2024. Go ahead.
Well, one more thing about 2023. Last time when we talked about this, we talked about important people who had passed away in 2023. And the one person I wanted to nominate as a key person was Rosalind Carter. Her passing away and her witness over the course of her life. There was a public figure who exhibited grace and character throughout her entire life. When I was young, the first election I was old enough to vote in, I think was 1980. First federal election I was able to vote in was 1980. And I was not a big Carter fan at the time. And for many years, I had, in terms of his political performance, I did not think he was that good. I changed my opinions some degree over the years. I think he probably rated him too harshly when I was younger. But in Jimmy's and Rosalind's life after the presidency, it's harder to think of many public figures in the United States who have lived a more genuine and authentic Christian witness than they have attempted to live in that time. And so her passing to me, and then what's sure to be his passing within these next few weeks or months, it feels like the transition, another slow transition from one era to another. And so maybe we will find who's going to be the next Jimmy and Rosalind. That
Yeah, I mean, yes, Rosalind Carter. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned her. Again, when we get back to leadership and character, I like to say, if you don't think character matters for leadership, just listen to the eulogies when leaders die.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
right,
you will, if you want to know that character truly does matter. I still
right,
remember when George H.W. Bush died. And I
yeah,
remember Alan Simpson, the former senator from Wyoming, who's got just this wonderful dry sense of humor. And
right,
he gave a eulogy for George H.W. Bush, and it was actually pretty funny, is the way he
yeah,
said it. But it was just a testament to character, and just
right,
why it matters. And so, if you don't think character matters for leadership, just listen to the eulogies that are given when leaders die. So,
right, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. All right, Michael, 2024. So let's
yeah.
start with the real important stuff. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh my goodness, that one I felt like had more. You could narrow it down to 3 or 4 teams last year. I have no idea how this is going to play out this year. It mid-season, I think I probably would have said Chiefs and Eagles is a very
Yeah,
possible repeat between those two teams. Both those teams have been faltering in recent weeks,
right.
and I don't know. I
You
don't
know
have any.
the AFC is much more up for grabs, isn't it, than the NFC? I
Oh
would
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah,
just incredible that and that you just can't count a lot of teams out. I mean, I hate to say it because the Ravens. I mean,
yeah.
the Ravens took the Browns. Baltimore took the Browns away. So so
Yes.
as I like to say, the Baltimore Ravens are the devil spawn. But they just continue to be pretty good. I mean,
They do.
they pull stuff out that's just amazing to me. I
Yeah.
mean, I think, don't count the Chiefs out. I mean,
Oh
I think
no.
if the Chiefs can get their act together and stop shooting themselves in the foot,
Right.
I think they have the talent and if they haven't, and if they, one of the things I was thinking about this the other day, Michael, because it's like baseball, and maybe it's more pronounced in baseball than in football. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
I can remember back when the Indians played the Cubs for the World Series and lost 2018, I think maybe. And
Right.
the Indians in the playoffs had just been as hot as could be.
Right.
And they played the Red Sox for the division, for the championship, to go to the World Series. And you could start to see them start to cool off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I can remember watching the games, and we won. We beat the Red Sox, which is, if you're a Cleveland fan, anytime you beat the Red Sox and the Yankees, life is good. And
Yes. Of course.
but I can remember saying to Carol as we were watching that last game, I'm saying, I'm concerned because they're cooling off.
Yeah.
And
Right.
this is not the time, right?
Right.
And you
Right.
just wonder, the Chiefs have had their slumps, but boy, I'll tell you what, in the last few games, if they can get it together and start to
Right.
get on a run, look out,
Oh, yeah.
you have to
Well,
hit their stride.
as we were saying earlier, what I was kind of alluding to earlier was the fact that 2 games ago they had a pass where there was pass interference that wasn't called that
Yeah.
very likely could have had them win the game, and they lost that game. And then this last game, they had a play called back because of a silly, guys not knowing how to line up on the line of scrimmage. And that got called back, and that very likely could have won them the game. So they've had 2 games in a row like that now. And
Yeah.
I think what you saw after that game with Mahomes and then Reed in that first 24 hours afterwards, the frustration level of them. And that's why I say I don't think I want to be the Patriots because I suspect
Yeah.
they've had it with this crap of losing and making mistakes
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. And if anybody can turn around difficulties in a team, find ways to readjust, I think it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Are if you're going to nominate some people who can turn around a team in a short time, I think
Yeah.
those are 2 people who can do it. Doesn't mean they will. Got to
Yeah.
see the evidence of it. I think they could still get there. I think they could still win. I could see them losing in the first round of the playoffs. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right. So anyway, baseball, the
yeah,
Guardians got a new manager, and so we'll see
yeah,
how that goes. Um,
yeah.
and I don't have any prognostications about how they're going to do this year. So
Right.
baseball's always a little bit of a different animal because you really don't know from year to year who's going to do what, right? I
Right.
mean,
That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
and
Well, we're
hopefully,
hoping for our Royals this year, but
yeah.
I'd just like to see them get to a season where they get back close to 500 again.
Yeah, yeah. You know
We'll
it's
see if
bad
that
when
happens.
it's no, but it's it's bad. I used to when I the 70s and the 80s, I when growing up with the old Indians, and you always were excited in an Indians fan if they were in second to last place as opposed to last place, right? I mean, talk about low expectations. So, all
Yeah.
right. Well,
Right.
we need to move on to predictions because we're getting to the time here,
Yeah.
2024. So, I mean, let's hit the election because that's the big thing. We got a
Right.
presidential election coming up. Unless something happens that I don't foresee, I think it's Trump and Biden.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible. I think it depends how these trials go, or at least if they start before the
Right.
election and what comes out if that. I mean, Trump's not going to be damaged with the base. The base is with him no matter what.
No,
As he
that's
said,
right. That's right.
he could shoot
Right.
somebody in New York City on the streets, and he'd still have people. But
Yeah.
the question really is those persons who have voted for Trump in 2016 and maybe even 2020, who they just don't want to go there again.
Right.
But here's the one thing again about the Republican Party politics that's just so bizarre right now, Michael, because you want to win elections, right? And again, I just don't know if the Republican Party really wants to win elections because, if Nikki Haley got the Republican nomination, she's the next
Right.
president. There is,
Very possibly.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine
Yeah.
any world in which Biden wins that. I mean, unless
Yeah.
she has some kind of major gaffe or something like that.
Right.
But,
Right.
and Chris Christie too, they're competent, true conservatives,
Right.
and they're younger. And
Right.
it would just seem to me that the natural Republican move would be to say we need either Chris Christie or Nikki Haley because they're our best bet to win the election.
Right. I think a big factor in this next election is going to be the abortion issue.
Yeah.
I still think that's going to drive a lot of Democratic votes, and I think it's the reason, and not the only reason, but a significant contributing reason why I think Biden will win. We're talking about the case down in Texas of
Yeah.
this woman who had an unviable fetus and couldn't get an abortion, and the Supreme Court ruled against her being allowed to have an abortion and had to go out of state to get it. When you are running campaigns against an abstract ideal of being pro-life versus personal testimony of somebody suffering in a particular situation. When you go back to Ireland, when was it, 10, 12 years ago, when they had very strict abortion laws and a woman died from getting a septic infection because she couldn't have an abortion for an unviable fetus. And that one woman's case was enough to totally revise the abortion laws in Ireland.
Yeah.
With these cases popping up in Texas, in Florida, Kentucky, you have various women's stories coming out like that, and I just think the abortion extremist views, the pro-life extremist views, just does not sit well with it. Was a significant swath of the American population.
Well,
so I think that's going to be I think a big hurt, and I don't see a way that the Republicans can message. I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm sure they'll try something, but I don't see how they're going to message their way around that. If the economy stays relatively stable, you've got a president with a relatively stable economy. You've got the threat to democracy, which some people will tap into. You've got abortion rights rights are being lost. I mean, you put all those things together. I think that makes Biden pretty hard to defeat.
And I've said this before, when it comes to abortion, I do not consider myself pro-choice. But I think there's just a lot of people who consider themselves pro-life, and they look at what's happening in Texas, and they look at what's happening here in Ohio with the woman who was pregnant by her father, raped by her father, incest, and had trouble getting an abortion. I think a lot of I think there are a lot of people in America who are really uncomfortable with abortion on demand, but they look at this and they say, what
This
in
is
the
wrong,
world?
too. Yeah,
And that
right.
it's just is too far beyond the pale.
Yeah,
And I think again, the extreme right, I'm not going to call them conservative because they're really not. The
yeah,
extreme right of the Republican Party is just continuing to move themselves toward being minority for sure, minority party. I mean, do they even win
yeah,
this? Do they lose the House? Do they win
yeah,
back the Senate? I mean, I'm not so sure they do.
yeah.
I'm not so sure they
No,
do.
no.
And I,
Yeah,
and again, I don't want to undermine the influential presence of Donald Trump because he still is a
right.
huge factor.
Absolutely.
But unless there's something I'm missing, and it sure could
Right.
be, it could well be, Michael, because
Yeah,
I miss lots of stuff.
yeah,
I don't see if it's a head-to-head between Trump and Biden. I think Biden wins,
right,
and
right.
I think and I don't think the age thing means much to a lot of people because Donald Trump's
Yeah,
only 3 years younger. I think that's a
right,
wash. And
right.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure come a year this next January that the Democrats control both houses and the White House.
Yeah, I think they'll control the House, the Senate. That's going to be challenging, but it's possible. I think that could possibly happen. You're right. Yeah. So
I just,
I think
yeah,
my prediction would be that Biden prediction. My expectation at this point is that Biden would win the presidency. Democrats will take the House and the Senate. Yeesh, maybe 50-50,
yeah,
maybe 51-49 Republican or something like that. But it could
yeah,
also be 51-52 Democrat.
yeah,
So I think that's where it seems to me to be things we're at. The issue is we're in December. The election is 11 months away.
right.
And there is so much that can happen in those next 11 months that it's very hard to really handicap things at this point.
Well, that's
And
right.
people are talking about Democrats are freaking out because polls, show Trump leading, and people are frustrated with the economy. They're frustrated about a number of things. They get a poll, they say, "Yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump." When you get down to the brass tacks and you see what's in front of you as you get closer to the election and your focus turns closer to what the issues are, what's going
Yeah,
on, I think most people, I say most people, but I think there'll be a significant number of people that will say, "Yeah, okay, I'm not happy with a lot of things, but Trump is not an option."
right.
As you get closer now, who knows what scandal, what world tragedy occurs, or what all sorts of things could happen in between in these next 11 months. But I really think that's where we're at this point. We'll see.
Yeah, 11 months is an eternity in politics, so you just don't know what
Yeah,
happens. So we can only prognosticate on what things are now and what they may be, but you never know. But
right.
I just heard a Democrat say the other day with the polls, Democrats freaking out over some of these polls. When he
Yeah,
he said, when it comes to polls, we Democrats are not potty trained. We
yeah.
just wet our diapers. We see the polls and we just wet our diapers everywhere. He
Right.
said
Yeah.
we just have to, we have to just kind of
Right.
calm down for a minute.
Right.
So.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and the point I was going to get to is they're talking about all these polls show Trump winning, the Democrats freaking out about all this type of stuff, and said yet when you talk to the Biden officials and people, they're just basically calm
Yeah.
down. It's
Oh
like
no.
we haven't even gotten to the election yet.
Yeah.
What's happening now? What people's views are, and people may be critical of that, but guess what? Guess who won the last presidential election? Guess who kept a red wave from happening in 2022?
Yeah.
Guess who keeps winning all
Yeah.
these? So that tells me, and this is always hard to cast this just right. It's not that the worst thing couldn't happen. It's not that Trump couldn't get elected or that some of these, radicals, it could happen.
Yeah.
But the likelihood of it happening, and are there ways to address it? Yes, there are.
Yeah.
And that's I think the kind of message. They're not saying it isn't going to be easy. They're not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to take work, but it's doable and it can be done.
Yeah.
So.
Other than the election, what do you think we need to watch for in 2024? What's going on as far as it doesn't have to be politics. It could be all kinds of things happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as we're getting towards the end of this episode, I want to reiterate what I do, and so much of my blogging and other things is, generally speaking, the world is going to get better next year.
Yeah.
Um, we are looking at things in terms of vaccines and the number of deaths and severe illnesses that are being reduced because of vaccine and medical technology. We're in the first year of the new nuclear technology that was discovered last year, and there's a model plant coming online to begin to test that for new and abundant energy sources. The use of AI in
Yeah.
medical work and being able to analyze things more quickly and accurately at incredible speeds, faster than we used to be able to develop new solutions to medical questions. Now, AI, I should also bring up, is also probably on the list of a lot of people's threats as well, too, concerns about how that works out. I haven't developed a firm view as to what I think about it. With almost any technology, there are very good things and very bad things that could develop. But I could go down a whole list of issues in terms of the physical, material well-being of people that I think is going to improve over these next years. The problem is there isn't a single world event that you can point to that says this flipped from this to that. It's the trajectory that things are moving, and trajectories are very hard to observe.
I continue. I continue when it comes to overall. I guess I'm just not a Chicken Little. I'm not a sky is falling kind of person.
Right.
I recognize that there are issues and problems, but I do. I look at where we're going on some of the stuff. AI. People who are pronouncing doomsday because of AI. Yeah, I mean, I think AI could have its problems. I don't think there's any doubts about that. But I also, when you see it, particularly in the science and the medical field, and the other thing is what people don't realize is that in science and medicine, they've been using AI for a long time. It's just that now that we can, now that you can have it write your term paper, which by the way, I say to my students, don't be enamored by that because it's got lots of problems. And I haven't done much. I haven't done much with AI, but I got on one time and I asked it to write a book review of a book that I knew that I had read. And I just couldn't imagine. I couldn't believe how much it got wrong.
Yeah.
That if I was a student, if I was a professor reading a book review like this from a student, I would have said, they would have gotten an F and said, next time read the book before you write it. Right.
Exactly.
I mean, it was amazing to me. So we just need to be, don't be too enamored with some of that stuff. But, Michael, progress is going to happen. This stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so the question is, are we going to use it for good? Are we going to use it for the benefit and the betterment of humanity? Or are we going to use it for nefarious purposes? That's the same. Right. That's been the same question for a long, long time for us in reference to anything. Yeah. What are we going to use? Right. What we have, what are we going to use it for? That's the question. So it goes back to being a moral question. It goes back to, we need to be people of character. We need to put people of character in charge of this stuff.
Right.
So,
yeah. I think it's important to lift up those positive things it feels like to me most of what we've talked about has been kind of on the negative or the warning side of it. I do think that ultimately that we will get through this time of anti-democratic pushes that are occurring. I think we're already seeing signs of the blooming of new ideas and new approaches to try to deal with that. They're nascent, so I mean they have to be brought to full fruition. There are so many things on the technological fronts in terms of personal well-being. Our economy is stabilizing in the future, so I think there are lots of things to look positively for.
Yeah.
In the future, it's just a matter of not shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right.
With people, with our decisions that put people in power that seek to undo and undermine much of that. Yeah,
I agree with you. Okay. Well, we need to wrap that up. So this is the last episode of 2023. Michael, it's been a great year, and I just always enjoy having a conversation with you. It's a lot of fun, and so we'll see what 2024 brings as we come up with new things to talk about and all of that. And I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's. And
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year to all the listeners.
everybody, and Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever it
Whatever.
is that you observe. Just hope it's great for you. And before you click out, do us a favor, and if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. It's free. If you're on the podcast, follow us. You can follow us, and when you do that, you really boost our egos. We need Michael and I need ego. We need our egos scratched. So go ahead and subscribe and
Indeed.
follow,
Right.
and we would appreciate that. So friends, this is it. And for 2023, I'm Alan Bevere. And a reminder that the patron saint of faith-seeking understanding is Anselm of Canterbury, who said, "I do not understand in order to believe, but I believe in order to understand." So friends, keep seeking.
Amen.